We just found out today that the New Orleans Pelicans have traded Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Tomas Satoransky, some salary filler, a 2021 first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks for CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell. Now, beyond just adding some supplementary scoring to the roster, this trade says a whole lot more about what's going on behind closed doors in New Orleans than I think people realize, and it's got me really excited for where this team is heading over the last stretch of the season. So in this video, I'm going to be going over all the details of this trade and what it means for the Pelicans and the Trailblazers going forward, why I think they made this trade in the first place, and why I also think this trade could mean that a Zion Williamson return is on the horizon. So be sure to stick around until the end so that you don't miss anything. As always, be sure to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. Now, right off the bat, I want to give some props to Josh Hart. He was nothing but a true professional in New Orleans, and the guy has been one of the most underrated role players in the NBA this year. He is a really good defender, a great rebounder for his size, and he can fit really nicely into just about any offense. And while I don't know if he's going to spend the rest of the season in Portland or if he's going to be traded as part of another deal, I truly do hope he gets the chance to compete for a championship after all that he's had to go through since he came into the NBA. I saw some slander being directed at him when this trade was first announced, but I truly do think he's a better player than most people are aware of. He's legitimately one of the best role players in the entire NBA right now. But as far as what the Pelicans received, what are they working with now? Obviously, adding CJ McCollum is going to help them offensively. The Pelicans really lacked a secondary creator alongside Brandon Ingram with Zion Williamson out, and CJ is going to be able to fill that hole really well. CJ is going to be that backcourt scorer that the Pelicans desperately needed. They had to rely on Graham to brunt a lot more of the scoring load than I personally think he was capable of, and so now he'll be able to defer to CJ and operate more as a shooter coming off screens and as a facilitator. CJ is still the same great shooter he's always been, shooting 38.4% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. He's also one of the most underrated mid-range guys in the NBA. This shooting is going to be huge, especially when you look at the fact that the Pelicans are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the entire NBA right now, making only 32.9% of all of their three-point attempts this season. He's going to offer some good supplementary playmaking as well. He's not the best facilitator in the world, and I don't think he can be your primary point guard, but I think he'll be more than capable of brunting some of the playmaking load during games. I'm not saying he should be starting at point guard or anything like that, but he will be just fine. But one of the more underrated aspects of this trade to me is the fact that they managed to acquire Larry Nance Jr. in this trade. Nance is going to be huge for their defense and rebounding. The Pelicans allow 112.4 points per 100 possessions, which is one of the lowest marks in the entire league. And he's going to be able to come in and be a good switchable defender to add to their defense. He does a really good job guarding perimeter threats, and he can also provide help at the rim on the interior. His ability to disrupt passing lanes and nab steals while forcing turnovers is going to help them out a ton on the defensive end of the floor, and I think him and Herb Jones are going to be a really fun defensive dynamic to watch unfold. Now, one of the biggest elephants in the room with this trade is the fact that they gave up their 2022 first-round pick. At a glance, this probably sounds really, really bad, but let's take a look at some of the protections that were placed on this pick. So if the pick lands between the 1st and 4th pick overall, it will go to the Pelicans. If it lands 5th through the 14th, it goes to the Trailblazers. If it lands in the 15th to 30th overall pick, it'll go to the Charlotte Hornets. Now, assuming the Pelicans are able to make a playoff push, which I'm going to talk about more in a minute, then this pick is going to be relatively meaningless in the grand scheme of things. While it is always a risk to give up a first-round pick, the protections do help alleviate some of the risk because if anything catastrophic were to happen, the Pelicans would still have a chance of keeping it if it lands within the top 4. The Pels are going to be able to run a lineup of Graham, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, and Jonas Valanciunas. And while I'm not thrilled about the defensive capabilities of that lineup, the amount of offense that they're going to have now is going to skyrocket. That's 2 20-point-per-game scorers in McCollum and Ingram, and Valanciunas is a very capable post scorer and roll man as well. Herb is really starting to come into his own as an offensive piece, and Graham has been shooting really well from 3. The team has been trending upwards recently, and I think adding CJ McCollum, while not having to sacrifice too much to do so, will have them solidly in the play-in tournament with the capability of making the playoffs. But there's one thing that people aren't talking about enough with this trade. Now, this may be me going full tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but I think that they made this trade because Zion Williamson is going to be returning soon. Why else would they make this trade? Think about it. Giving up assets, especially a relatively valuable first-round pick, when you're not even sure if you're going to make the play-in, that'd be irresponsible, right? You wouldn't make that trade. I don't think the Pelicans make this trade unless they're certain that Zion is coming back. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they made this trade in order to get him to come back. They're within reach of the 7th seed. They could easily make a playoff push, but it's a lot riskier if it's just Brandon Ingram and Zion leading the charge for the playoffs. So you add another scorer in McCollum to get you in an even better position, and then you add Zion Williamson to that mix as well. Now you're really starting to sound like a playoff team. A potential starting lineup with ignoring positions, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas is scary. That is a ridiculous amount of offense in a 5-man lineup. Assuming that they can make it mesh, they're going to be putting up a ridiculous amount of points every single night. They also have a guy like Jackson Hayes, who's really starting to look like he's coming into his own as a player. So you add that alongside guys like Devontae Graham and 𝙖𝙗𝙤𝙪 off your bench, with young pieces like Trey Murphy still developing. This team can easily make the playoffs if Zion comes back. They have all the firepower in the world to get there. At that point, it really just becomes a question of how far they can go. And with a fully healthy Zion Williamson, I'm not sure there's a limit to how far they can go. For Portland, I still don't really understand why they made this trade. Getting Josh Hart is certainly a good pickup if you're trying to add a player that can help you contend for a championship, but other than clearing salary, I'm not sure what else this trade really serves for them. So what do you think of this trade? Do you think that the Pelicans are the winners of this trade? Do you think Portland was the winner of this trade? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on the video, because that is the #1 way to help me out with the YouTube algorithm and get this video recommended to more people. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.